So I've already done a video on the Steam Deck as a console, but how does it work as a PC, as Valve marketed it as a PC as well as a console? So let's get into the video and find out. Right, here we are. So here is the desktop mode of SteamOS, and this is running Arch Linux. And so this is how you would install emulators. As you can see, I've got a few up here. How you install web browsers, how you do basically anything you would on an actual PC. The main thing that you need to know about this PC mode is that there is something here called Discover. I'll talk about that in a second, but that's basically how you install everything on this system. And besides that, it's actually quite similar to Windows if that's what you're most familiar with. So you have the little what's called application launcher here. So this is basically your start menu where you go and open everything. You have your taskbar here, so you can get like recently used apps, or you can go to, you know, Wi-Fi settings, Bluetooth settings, all the rest of it. And all the drivers work completely out of the box, as you would hope. Nothing so far that I've found has actually not worked properly. There's been occasional errors, but they will happen on Windows or, you know, Linux or even Mac OS, so that just happens all the time. For me personally, it's been nothing like system breaking or anything. I'll only show you the Steam Deck screen for a bit because it's quite hard to see and it doesn't quite scale as well as I would like. So I'll show you on a bigger screen in a minute, and yes, you can plug it into an external monitor and it works absolutely fine like you would expect. I can't get my words out. But for the most part, it works fine, and I will show you what kind of things you can do with it. So this is what they call Discover. Not quite the same as a package manager, but it's basically just, if you've ever used the App Store, so like Google Play Store or iOS Store, it's kind of similar to that, or even like the Microsoft Store on Windows, that kind of thing. So this is where you basically install all of your stuff. Now, this is both a fantastic thing about Linux and also a pretty terrible thing about Linux. And the reason why is, the fantastic part is that obviously you don't have to go hunting on the internet to try and find every single application you want. It's all right here, and it's all safe as far as I know, because they have to have a lot of security in place to make sure that packages work and everything. You can just go and search in the search bar here. So let's go with Discord, right? So if I type in Discord, there we go. Got a Discord and Discord Canary right here. So two different versions of it, and you can just install it and it just works. But the downside being is that these are only Flatpak packages. It's going to take forever to explain, and I'm a terrible person to explain how all the technical stuff works. So go and look at other people's videos if you want more of the technical details of it. But in a very basic term, Flatpak is basically like an easier way for different distros to be able to install programs, as far as I'm aware. And so I think it's a bit easier to maintain. But on the other hand, it's not supported by every app so far. One in particular is the Itch launcher. If I search for Itch, nothing found. Even if you do itch.io, there's nothing found there either. So there are a couple of apps that you would think would be just fine on SteamOS, but aren't, because again, they don't have any flat packages, and especially because this is Arch Linux based instead of Debian based, there isn't as many applications for Arch in the first place. If it's on here, it will work very well, and it's a very simple process, just install it. I mean, you've even got Space Cadet Pinball. I mean, what else do you need? But on the other hand, if it's not on here, it's going to be much harder to try and install. And there are ways of doing it. Like if you go into the console and you do like install it through Pac-Man, then you can get some stuff to work that way. But then even then, like, there's a password that I don't know what the password is, because you don't set one up in SteamOS mode. You only set it up in the gaming mode. But essentially, if that's too complicated for you, and I completely understand, it's kind of going over my head a bit, just use this. But this will still have the vast majority of what you need. It's got Discord. If you go to Zoom, it's got Zoom. It's got all the web browsers that you want. So we got Chrome here. Linux always comes with Firefox anyway. So you got Firefox. You've even got Edge now, which only has come out recently. And I know only 5 people are going to use it, but because I use it on Windows, and yes, I actually do use Edge on Windows, it's kind of convenient for me to have it on here as well. As much as I hate how aggressive Microsoft is shoving Edge, because Edge is actually a decent browser, but because Microsoft is shoving it so hard into people's faces, it kind of makes me not like it as much. At least it's here for consistency's sake. Most of the programs that you would actually want are on here, and if you want more information on what is or what isn't on Flatpak, or what you can install, if you go to flathub.org, it will show you here, for instance, the popular apps. Obviously Firefox will be popular. Got Spotify, DS Emulator, GIMP for photo editing, VLC for playing stuff back. Even before you buy the Steam Deck, or before you're even able to, realistically speaking, it will show you here exactly what apps you can and can't install on the Steam Deck, or at least in theory anyway. So let's go into some of the apps that you can use. So before we go into the app performance, I just wanted to, you know, test the web browser. And as we can see, especially with that 16 gigs of RAM, I honestly don't know why it has that much RAM, but in cases like this where you have a lot of tabs open, that is very handy, as you can imagine. So as we can see, Reddit is all the pictures, all the text loading absolutely fine. Twitter, same thing, all the text and videos are playing just fine. Instagram, exactly the same thing, all the images load just fine. I haven't had any issues. Again, you would expect there wouldn't be any issues, just double checking obviously. And even as we've got here, we've got one of these LG OLED like demo videos, 4K 60. You know, not a single dropped frame or anything. There was some dropped frames initially. As we can see, it's running absolutely fine. 4K 60 FPS video. I mean, that is looking really nice. These videos look amazing. Like, you would hope so, considering they're supposed to be selling TVs. But even with other web browsers open. Okay, now it's getting a bit louder. If you were worried about watching videos on here by any means, for general web browsing, this should have absolutely no issues. And as far as I'm concerned, it runs absolutely fine. So here's Discord running. This is me texting my good friend Gavin, and it's running absolutely fine. So I'm gonna send him a message now telling him I'm doing it from the Steam Deck. Hi from the Steam Deck. He's also sent me videos for this Lego game as well, so we can play that. As you can see, videos from Discord play just fine. Game actually looks pretty decent though, to be fair. GIFs, all the rest of it. I haven't really done much on servers. I'm not much of a Discord server guy, even though there's that one person who called me a Discord mod. I don't really use servers that much, so maybe there might be some incompatibilities, but I can't see why there would be, and at the moment Discord's running just fine. Say hi to the people watching. No issues. Hopefully. Here's Audacity, another program that I use quite regularly, as you can imagine. I can click here and I can start recording. So you can see it's picking up my voice. Then we play it back. I can click here and I can start recording. So let's go to, echo. I can do that. Okay. You can see my voice. All the effects. Again, as far as in my very limited testing goes, runs absolutely fine. Probably shouldn't have to mention this, but obviously Steam runs just fine. I mean, if it didn't, that'd be both funny and really weird at the same time. Did big picture mode, that works. So I've heard a lot of people say how they can play Game Pass games through the cloud on the Steam Deck using Microsoft Edge, but you can and can't actually do it through Chrome. So technically speaking, as you can see here, I'm on the Chrome browser and it is opening, but if I say open Skate 3 here, as you'll see, it says not only is the network unsupported, which I'm not really sure what that means, Wi-Fi is working just fine, but for some reason it says controller is disconnected or idle. So for some reason, even though, as you can see, I've got both, obviously the Steam Deck itself and my Xbox One controller connected to the computer, for some reason, Chrome just will not accept the fact that the controller is connected. So technically speaking, you can play it through Chrome, but it won't pick up the controller, so I'm not sure if that's an issue with Flatpak or if that's something you can configure in the settings, but as an out-of-the-box experience, you can't, but in theory, you can play it through Chrome. Right, so yeah, I couldn't get the controller working, either in Chrome or in Edge, and after a bunch of Googling, I found out that apparently you have to like override the initial Flatpak, because Flatpak doesn't allow controller support natively or something. In this guy particularly, you can also set it that it just goes straight to the xbox.com/play webpage and not to Edge first. So this is if you just want Edge for that. At the moment, it's a really complicated thing, and you have to Google it and you have to do a bunch of research in order to get it working. So out of the box, game streaming doesn't work properly with anything because of that stupid controller input, but hopefully in the future it will get a bit better. So at the moment, not great, but it does seem like it's only going to get better from here at least. So I decided to edit on the actual screen itself, and it is pain. I mean, it is doable. If you absolutely have to rely on 8-inch screen to edit on, then it is possible, and the Steam Deck is actually handling it pretty well, but definitely use an external display if you actually want to get anything done or not cry. And here's me, actually editing it. Now, this is only a 900p display, so even this is a bit cramped for me, to be honest, but it's a lot easier than it is on the main display. Hopefully you can hear me over the sound, but it scrubs through pretty well. It plays back clips pretty well. When I've got a keyboard connected, yeah, but obviously your mileage will vary. The more effects you have, the bigger the timeline is, the worse it will get. But for basic YouTube videos, basic editing, small movies, that kind of thing, it should be absolutely fine. Like, I thought that CPU was going to be really, really weak, but it seems like, at least on Shotcut, which is a relatively lightweight editor, it seems to work absolutely fine for me. And although I think I'll still go back to my laptop just because that's what I'm more used to, like the whole Windows environment and everything, I could definitely see myself editing from this, especially if I plugged into the 1440p monitor instead. So far, I haven't run into any, serious issues with it.
Later that same evening.
Well, here we go. Here's something, isn't it? I'm running low on available memories. I've been editing this video, so there's one issue I've encountered too with editing, I guess. So I've had this warning yet again while I've been editing that video, and what I really don't understand is that, as you can see, Shotcut is only using 4.2 gigs of RAM, and then Steam's using half a gig, Discord's using a quarter, and all the rest of it. So that really only adds up to about 5, maybe 6 gigs of RAM. There's 14.5 gigs totally available, so obviously 1.5 it's for the GPU, I imagine. But what I really don't understand is that it's only using 6 gigs. So obviously 6 plus 1.5 or 2, that's 8. Where's the the other 8 gigs of RAM going? What, to the system? Does the system just need 8 gigs of RAM? That's like worse than Windows. Windows only needs 6 to run.
The next morning.
So it's the next day now, but as you can see, now it's only using 2.9 gigs of RAM as opposed to like 9 gigs it was yesterday. So I don't know what's fixed now, but it should be using about 2 to 3 gigs of RAM roughly. So this is normal, but before it was using like 9 to 10. I still have no idea what the issue was, but at least after a restart of the system, after doing a system update, it seems to have fixed itself now. So that's good.
Later.
Another update in the video editing process. So the video is finally done, but when I'm just about to export, as you can see, so I can select H.264 high profile, 1920 by 1080, or the rest of it. Go to export file, nothing. See there in the jobs, there should be something there. No matter how many times I click this, it's not going to export. The fact that I went through the entire video and now I can't even render it is just a bit dumb, really. There's another issue I've coming to when trying to use this as a, main PC. So now, because I tried to copy the project folder from this computer to my laptop, if I open this one, it comes up with all these files that are missing. I was like, okay, no problem. I will just go into the folder that they're in. For some reason, I have to right click it and then it selects it. So I go open. See, so that's fine. I click OK. And then it goes, which one of these do you want to open? That one, if I open this one, it just comes up with a failure. And this one, it just comes up with click one. You only select one file. Apparently that's selecting multiple files. So if I click this one, do you want to overwrite it? I guess. So yeah, not only can I not export, now somehow I've just lost my save file.
Just then.
Let me show you what I found. So now that I've opened a new save, so you see test export. First of all, if I go to open file, that now works. And second of all, if I go to export, that now works. I just clicked something else and my timeline is back and it is playing. Video testing Linux game. Okay. Oh, I can ignore it. Okay. I just want to get this exported now. What do you mean by you can only select one file? That doesn't make... Wait. This is a good sign. This is a good sign. Let's put 1%. This is actually working. Oh, okay. I literally just thought I lost 6-7 hours worth of progress there.
Later.
So after about another hour or so, because I had to re-edit all of the music and I had to re-edit a bunch like the SpongeBob title card things. After all that... on the Steam Deck. It finally runs, so there we are. Okay, so I finally actually rendered the whole video now, so I didn't lose 6 hours worth of progress. I only lost about 1 or 2, so that's a lot better.
The following day.
And there we are. Finally, this is now on the SD card, so I can move it over to my computer. I'm glad that it's working now, because I was genuinely... I don't know what I was going to do. I was going to have to re-edit the entire video, and as you can imagine, that was not a good prospect for me. At least video editing is now doable on the Steam Deck, so that's pretty handy if I need to use it in a pinch. And as you can see, games on Steam Deck backup, and this is now my laptop. So all I had to do was just click save as, and then that saved to the SD card, but I can't do it just moving the files over, just clicking save as and then putting onto the SD card and then moving the SD card over to my computer. That worked, and I was even able to just find all the clips as well on my computer. So
one pathetic sub story later.
Right, and we're back to the main camera now. As I suspected, I was trying OBS, you see, and I'll get to that in a second, but what I was doing here is when I was clicking file and show recordings, nothing was happening when I clicked it. So I was a bit like, oh, it's the same thing that was happening with Shotcut, so what's going on? So I went to Flat Seal. There's a whole bunch of programs here. Went to OBS, and the main thing that I did here was I put all user files as system file home, but I had to actually restart the computer, which it didn't tell me you had to do after a restart, which probably sounds obvious in hindsight, and it kind of is, but at the time it didn't say anything, so I didn't think of it. There's no confirm button or anything. So now that I've restarted, as you can see, it does open the actual recording. Bit annoying because you have to download not only a program, but you also have to configure it and then restart. Something that people who this is their first computer, which very well may be the case, may not necessarily know that, and I didn't even know that about flat packs and stuff. The only reason I even found out about it was literally because of trying to set up Microsoft Edge for the Game Pass. I haven't even bothered actually finishing that, but that's the only reason I even found out about the programs. But besides that, everything's been working relatively well. I've had glitches here and there. I've had some things not quite work properly, but that's to be expected with a desktop, unfortunately. You'll get that with Linux, with macOS, and especially with Windows. But anyway, let's try the recording performance. So if we go to start recording, the Steam Deck does actually have its own built-in speakers, and they're not even that bad. They're alright. Not great by any means, but they're definitely fine for just voice call or, Discord call. OBS is working really well, actually. It's playing at 60 FPS. OBS is working really well, actually. It's playing at 60 FPS. A lot better than my laptop, which I remember ages ago. This is a HP Pavilion, I think it was. And because of the terrible AMD CPU in there, the encoding was absolute garbage. And I mean mean that genuinely. I was only recording at 720p and it was stuttering like crazy. It was like 20 FPS or something. So integrated graphics have come a long way since then. Even, you know, screen recording and possibly even streaming is possible from this. As long as you're not playing an intensive game, I don't see why streaming would be an issue. I even tried just recording a game of speedrunners. So this is at 1080p at medium bitrate, I think they call it. And yeah, so far, I did have a little bit of issue with sound, but just the actual recording itself, you could always record that on Audacity. Don't really see any stuttering or any frame rate issues that much. And yeah, there is a little bit of stuttering, but I'm not quite sure if that's the game itself or if that's the recording. But for the most part, this works pretty well. Hey, would you look at that? There's emerald blocks here. Nice. These things are very rare. Minecraft performance is pretty decent. I mean, we are running it here at about 1440p. Keeping that in mind, if I just look at the floor at 60 FPS quite easily, and even in certain parts of the map, like if I look over here, it's pretty much solid 60 FPS. Problem is, there. All of a sudden, depending on what the scenario is, it will go from like 60 to just absolutely tanking to 30. The main issue is not so much the GPU, but the CPU, which is why the frames drop a lot more drastically. If you're running mods or shaders or anything, your mileage would definitely vary. After playing it a bit longer, although the FPS certainly is fine, like it's usually somewhere around the mid-40s, like for me personally, it's not bad. As you can see, it's mainly just the stuttering that's actually really bad. And again, I think that's because the CPU and GPU are fighting for power so much. Neither gets enough performance that they need, and so that's why there's a lot of stuttering. And Minecraft's usually not the most stable game anyway, especially Java edition. Frame rate inconsistencies are really bad. I'm not entirely sure which settings are more CPU intensive apart from literally just the render distance, but yeah, overall performance is alright, but certainly not ideal out of the box. And the last two games I just want to play, there's somebody's actually ported Space Cadet from Windows XP, which I used to play that all the time back in the day, so I want to do that. And obviously, you know, Super Tux Kart, because this is Linux. You can't have a Linux system without Super Tux Kart on it. So just as a fun way to round the video up, I'll play some Linux indie games. If you want to see like a full video of me testing out some of these open source Linux games that you can just download and play for free on the Steam Deck, then let me know. Here we go. Here's the classic Space Cadet. Spacebar pushes the ball. There we go. It has been so long since I've played Space Cadet. Yep, working just as well as I remember it back on XP. You can go full screen if you want. You can even do multiple players. You can even do 120 FPS. That is really cool that you can just download something like this, which you can't even play on like Windows 10, for example. And then the other one is a legal requirement to play either or. Here's Super Tux Kart. Why do I have to make a username password?
5 minutes later.
Look at him. Look at the little guy there. To be fair, Super Tux Kart is actually a pretty decent game. And if you want like a full video on this or something, you know. Oh no, don't tell me it's the arrow keys. Oh, I'm missing one of the arrow keys, so this is just gonna be pain.
Moments later.
I can just use the Steam Deck for it. Look at that. Y is forward. Okay, that's really dumb. But yeah, look at this. I mean, okay, the controls definitely need some work, but I can actually straight up use the Steam Deck itself. I did not expect that, to be honest. Again, these are completely free, so even if you're broke after buying the Steam Deck itself, you have something. Overall, pretty decent. One final thing I almost forgot to do, and I just wanted to touch on briefly, is emulation. So when you're in gaming mode, this is the only resolution you can have. For some reason, for me, full screen doesn't work, and I'm sure there's a way you can work around it, but just out of the box, it doesn't work. Besides that, all the games run absolutely fine. I've tried a few of them now, but the only thing that's a bit annoying with Dolphin in particular is trying to map it, because you can only have either the Pro Controller or the Wii Controller, and then some games do let you have the Pro Controller connected and some of them don't. So I've configured it for Mario Bros. Wii at the moment, which is one of my favourite games, especially the fact that it's running at basically 480p anyway, and if you're on gaming mode on the Steam Deck, it will use FSR to upscale it, and it looks surprisingly decent, at least for this game in particular. So I've got it configured as a sideways Wii remote now. Dolphin's definitely one of the easier ones to set up. It's just the controls can be a bit awkward. It doesn't look great when it's in full screen mode like this. Definitely looks a lot more pixelated, although again, you can change that in the settings if you need to, but I would prefer playing Dolphin through gaming mode anyway, especially when it's lower resolution. You upscale it with FSR, it runs a lot better and it looks absolutely fine. So I've had no issues with Dolphin. Okay, well I can't quit out of this now, so that's great.
Moments later.
Look at this. I mean, obviously at the time, these games looked amazing, and especially for the PSP, they did a fantastic job with Test Drive, because it's basically just a glorified PS1, so be able to render an open world racing game like this. But yeah, I've got this on I think like 2 or 3 times upscaling, and it does look a little more cartoony with the upscaling that I've got on here, but for the most part, it runs absolutely fine, especially because PPSS PP has its own like controller style interface. It is much easier to get around the the menus in the gaming mode than it is on Dolphin, for example, which is more, you know, has a PC interface. Overall, emulation runs pretty well, just from the consoles I've wanted to do, mainly relatively modern ones from like the PS2 onwards. I think I'm done here, so back to outro me. Look at that. Wow, I have a lot of updates I need to do on the Steam Deck. Overall, the Steam Deck is actually a surprisingly competent computer. Like, when I first used it, I thought, oh, it's going to be a lot more locked down than I'd like. Although it definitely isn't as open as I would like it to be still, it's a lot more usable than I expected. The main thing that I like, but also dislike at the same time, is that Flatpak store, or as they just call it, Discover. Because the great thing about it is that you don't have to go hunting around the internet for your apps. You can just use the search bar and find exactly what you want. So that's fantastic. But the downside being is you can only use Discover. You can only use the search bar. Now, you might be able to do some commands and you might be able to get around Valve system, but it feels a lot like Windows 10 and Windows 11, where certain apps, like especially on Windows 10 with Game Pass, you can't actually access the file system unless the game specifically allows you to. And it's things like that that really annoy me, because it's my computer, so why are they telling me how to use my computer? You know what I mean? That's like an Apple move to do. And Valve's doing a similar thing here, but all the essential apps are there, and that's only going to impact you if you're doing very specific things, and if you're that kind of person, you might be able to get around it anyway. But for me personally, it is a bit annoying, but it's definitely more than usable as even your main PC, depending on what you want to do. I mean, I even did video editing on it, and although it was definitely not the best experience, as long as you weren't doing too many effects, it worked fine for me personally after I got around some of the Flatpak issues. Overall, it's actually a fantastic gaming machine. It's a really, really good gaming machine, and it's surprisingly good as a PC as well. Great device. If you even wanted to use it as your main PC, as long as you're willing to put up with Linux, you probably could. You actually could, and that's the cool thing about it. Especially for the price, you'd be hard pressed to find a gaming laptop that isn't used that has similar gaming performance to this. If you can actually find one, which is the main issue, yeah, I could see you using it as a PC, although obviously your mileage may vary, so don't just take my word for it. Have a look at a few other reviews as well to see if it's got the right use case for you, but pretty darn good. So if you liked the video, like. If you didn't like, I'm sorry, I guess, and see you later, bye.